Theirs has got a little bit more depth to it. They do a couple more other unusual things with it. But it's essentially a three-point structure. Last year they had, Dean Nettle got into the semifinal round, didn't he?
Something like that.
Yeah, it was either, I think it was the semifinal round. They had somebody in the semifinal round of nationals who was doing three-point structure. So it is possible, okay? But they're doing some other unusual things. The vast majority of people are going to do this. The reason why I'm talking about this right in the beginning is because you guys are all new to Impromptu, okay? And it's the easiest way to get started. But ultimately, you're going to want to talk to your coach, do this particular structure for the first month and a half, and then force yourself to get over here. Once you've got the basics of being able to constantly, when you're able to come up with an interpretation every time, when you're able to agree or disagree every time, when you're able to come up with examples every time, that's when you want to start switching and you want to stretch, okay? If you have questions for me after we're done about the two-point structure, I'll be happy to talk to you about that when we're done. You know, but you're absolutely right. The reason is that, well, first of all, it's a harder thing to come up with for. Okay. Second thing is there's a greater level of analysis in between the points because you have now another structure of analysis going on. It's just, in my mind, that you can go deeper with that quotation. Yeah.
Could you elaborate more? Actually, I don't know if you've already talked about it, but how do they grade as a judge? What are you looking out for?
Every judge is a little bit different, okay, in any of the events, okay? Judges are strange people because we all have different things that we look for, okay? There are certain things that are complete no-nos to me. Like me, this is the first thing I look for. And I would call myself a content judge to begin with first and foremost. I'm mainly listening to what you say rather than how you're saying it. Some judges out there are going to be style-based that are looking for you to speak, you know, pretty flawlessly without stutters and stammers and that sort of thing. We'll get into style in just a moment. But every judge is going to have criteria. The most basic fundamental criteria I can say is, do you follow this basic format of interpreting the quotation, agreeing or disagreeing, having a clear structure of a preview? Do you fill all 7 minutes worth of your time? Are you prepping for like 2 minutes or under? Okay? Does it seem like you're actually talking about things and they tie back? All those things are big deals. Okay? That's the most basic stuff. We can talk about that in a little bit more detail. At this moment, what I'd like to do is shift things, okay? And if somebody wouldn't mind taking the camera from Kyle, okay? I'm going to have Kyle do an impromptu speech for you guys, okay? I'm going to sit in the back somewhere, okay? Oh, that's your pen?
I guess it is now.
Oh, okay. Oh, we're running low on time. Okay, cool. So I'm going to have Kyle do a speech. Where's the quotation? Let me see.
I wrote like where it's from and everything too. I hope that's good.
Okay. Sure.
Sounds great.
Have fun with that, Kyle. Let me stopwatch. Okay, I'll go ahead and
All set?
sit back here. While he's prepping, you know, talk loudly amongst yourselves. Yeah, you'll hear him. You'll hear him. Okay, sorry, Carl. Quotations at the bottom. Okay. Time. Thirty. A minute.
In England's last election, the British Nationalist Party thought that they could capitalize on the recent trend to the conservative side in England. And in doing so, they thought that by capitalizing, they'd be able to win more seats in Parliament. But trouble came when one of their candidates for the English Parliament said that rape shouldn't be considered a crime because it's like being force-fed cake, and don't we all like cake? Now, whether or not the National Party thought that having an anti-women platform would have been good for them, this kind of misstatement or joke is something that hurt them a lot in their campaign. And while the Conservative Party benefited, the far-right National Party slopped because of that misstatement. When we looked at today's quotation from the man with the golden gun, I like the girl in the bikini, no concealed weapons. What this quotation is saying is that sometimes by appearing the least threatening, you could get the farthest ahead. The British National Party, by having this guy who says something that is grossly sexist and misogynist, showed that they weren't able to win the election because they appeared threatening and wrong. So we need to agree with this quotation that appearance does go a long way, by first seeing that looking good can help someone win, and second, by seeing that smart advertising is just important, even if it's not what you really are. But first, we need to look to the power of appearance, and that in selling a point, what's ultimately important isn't really what you're saying, but how you're saying it. And to really agree with this, we need to first look to the distinction between analytic and continental philosophy. Then we need to apply it to the Democratic primary in 2008. But first, in modern philosophy, there are generally two schools of thought. Analytic, which focus very heavily on logic, and then continental, which tends to bash logic, uses big words and simple meanings. Now, while analytic is more popular in universities in America, continental, which is a little more simpler, sells much better in bookstores. This is because it looks deeper without actually being deeper, and doesn't have the logical credibility. But by looking good, they're actually able to appear even more deep. Now, this idea and this kind of selling method for continental philosophy can easily be applied, unfortunately, to what happened in the Democratic Party, where there was a wide range of candidates that reflected the best of the party, but even though there were some brilliant, experienced minds like Joe Biden and Bill Richardson, who had been in the government for decades, the guys at the head of the line were Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, and John Edwards, people who really hadn't had that much experience and didn't even have that much to say. But because they looked flashy and they had big names, they were able to go a long way. And ultimately, that was their selling point, not any depth to their actual politics. So now that we've seen the importance of looking good, we also need to see that it's important to really just sell yourself, even if you really aren't so innocent. For example, what if there is an invisible gun to the bikini? First, we need to look at Machiavelli's Discourses on Livy, and then we need to apply it to Dom Norix and Diwydiachus. But first, in Machiavelli's Discourses on Livy, which is very similar to The Prince, he talks about how ideal leaders, while they need to rule with an iron fist, need to look as innocent as possible, being merciful even if they're not. While they can be complete dicks to those who work for them, as long as they look generous and don't tax their people very high, they're able to use that popularity to gain more leverage, even if they have dickish ways. This idea can easily be applied to the Gallic Wars, where Julius Caesar worked with two Gallic leaders, Diwydiachus and Dom Norix. Now, Dom Norix was strongly anti-Roman as the Roman army was entering Gaul, and Diwydiachus was an ally of the Romans, and these two were brothers. Now, when Caesar found out that Dom Norix was planning on assassinating him, he caught Dom Norix, but Diwydiachus begged him that if Caesar actually let Dom Norix go off free, the Gauls would actually support Caesar even more, and they would side with him even as he tried to conquer them. So Caesar, in return, was very innocent to Dom Norix, letting him go off free with just a warning, and in doing so, a lot of Gallic tribes allied with Caesar. This helped him to take over Gaul more easily because some of the Gallic tribes were on his side, even as he committed gross acts of genocide. So by appearing good, he was able to hide more dickish ways that were kind of assholes to the people he was trying to